globalizes.
Thanks so much for coming to this panel. We've got fantastic lineup of people, and we are going to try to get this initial bit of the session where it's the panel speaking. We're going to try to restrict that to 30 minutes because we want more time for questions. So that means that I'm relying on you all to be thinking up brilliant questions that really challenge this panel. One other thing I'd like to say at the beginning, which is that at the end of this session, we're going to take a couple of minutes, a couple of minutes before the end of the session, and I'm going to go round the panel, getting each panel member to give us one specific concrete action they would like to see over the next 2 years to make sure that Japan and the world gets the most out of this incredible moment when we've got Rugby World Cup and Olympics. What do we suggest as an action? And I'd like you to think about that as well. And you put your own ideas. You know, one of the principles of Globus G1 is let's get some ideas, let's get some action going. So, so think about that as well, okay? Right, now. So that means you've all got to do a lot of work, right? Well, it's not just up to the panel. I've got a few questions which structure this initial part of the conversation. So I'm going to put the first question. I'm going to start off with Kenneth at the end there, and I'm going to ask the question about how can we use these next 2 years, Rugby World Cup, Olympics, to change the idea of being Japanese. We've got a very interesting moment where a lot of Japanese sports people, very famous Japanese sports people, are mixed race. We've got a very international rugby team representing Japan. Can we use this to change some of the ideas about being Japanese in a positive way? Kenneth.
Great. Thank you, and pleasure to be here at the G1 Global Summit. So, again, thank you for my panelists to allow me to speak first. This is a very interesting time with both, of course, the Rugby World Cup and Olympics coming to Tokyo. We're in a world now that the meaning of what is Japanese is more and more of an open question. I think before it's quite clear what is Japanese, 100% Japanese, the most homogeneous nation in the world, I think. But now, I think we could ask ourselves a question, is Japan a country? Is it a language? Is it a culture? Is it religion? Perhaps it's all of those. So, you know, with the most obvious cases out there now with Rui Hachimura being drafted in the first round of the NBA, and Naomi Osaka, that definition of what is Japanese is, I think, open to interpretation and perhaps more acceptance and more open than ever before. So we were talking pre-session here, and I think, you know, going back even to the Olympics and with Jesse Owens in 36? That's only 70, 80 years ago that even as Americans, I think now we take it for granted that Americans are all shapes, colors, and sizes. Of course, open to debate even in America still. But it wasn't that long ago, just maybe our grandparents' generation, that we questioned or that we're as open to what is the meaning of what is American. So similarly now, maybe we're just in that same phase of what is the definition of being Japanese or what is a Japanese athlete is maybe much more of a open question and much more open, everyone being perhaps more open to that answer of expanding what that might be.
Thanks very much, Kenneth. And I think you picked up on some very important themes that I could see a lot of people nodding about. So I'm expecting great questions on that. Okay, Gen, would you like to?
Sure. 5 days to go until the Rugby World Cup is coming, so it's exciting time. So I'm just curious, how many people actually in this room have a ticket for the Rugby World Cup? All right, interesting. Okay, got it. I just want to know. You got 2. Oh, sorry. Unfortunately, I don't have any ticket to provide it to you after the session. Sorry about that, by the way. So, sorry about that. I have to be really, I have to control the expectation level firstly because, otherwise I was screwed up in the end. So, by the way, to answer the question, I mean, rugby, I think some of you might know, but we have a really special eligibility of the national teams who can be the like a Japanese national teams. So Japan teams, we have like a 15 like a players who are born outside of Japan. So basically, the players do not have a nationality, but as far as the player spend the more than like 3 years, and then they are not selected in the other countries like a representative, then they can be the players can become the national team players. So super internationalized Japanese teams, which is called the Brave Blossom, will try to be qualified to the best 8. Then the captain of the national team is called Michael Leash. So he was born in New Zealand, but he came to Japan when he was like a high school student. And he became the Japanese, actually, he got a wife, like a Japanese wife, and he got like a, citizenship. So I think it's simply, like a showcase. What does it mean by like, if you see the Japanese national team players are singing the national anthem just before the match, and like even the players who doesn't have Japanese nationality are crying, really proud of being the team. And they are, as a team, they try to learn about the culture of Japan and also the history of Japan, where's the Kimigayo sentence are coming from. They went to the Sazareishi together. So all of that process actually becoming a team as one. So I think if you were born in Japan, we recognize we are Japanese, like without any doubt. But they are kind of like taking a step to really to taking through the process where they understand this. I'm actually the part of the Japanese team. So nationality sometimes really the things we get without any difficulties, any hardship. But like the rugby actually like indicates like a little bit like a different aspect and a perspective. That's my idea.
Thanks again. I think that rugby potentially has that ability to show that you can be fully Japanese, but from another place. And I think that's something I hope comes through. Now, I'm going to encourage our next panelists to maybe tighten up their timing a little bit, because we're racing through. So, Kenneth. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, David.
Is this me? Okay. Is this one on? Okay, it's on. Yeah, thank you. So I want to do this quickly. So picking up on what Ken was saying, the idea of being Japanese as being a language, a race, a nationality, a legal entity, it was all kind of mixed, and there was no real definition, right? You were Japanese or you weren't. So what that meant was it was exclusive, right? You were Japanese or you weren't. And there was if you become Japanese, you're nothing else. You have to give everything else up. So I think what rugby can do with the great rules for rugby, if you live in Japan, you can play for the national team. It's going to make it being inclusive about being Japanese. It won't be exclusive anymore. So yeah, he grew up in New Zealand, but now he's Japanese too. He's also Japanese, and that's what I'm really looking forward for from rugby. And rugby also has a great tradition. I don't know if you know this. At the end of the game at rugby, what the referee says is no side. That's how he ends the game. So there's no distinction between you and anyone else. And that's perfectly aligned with this idea of being more inclusive. And so rugby is a great place to start this. That's it.
Thanks very much. And Hiromi, we've heard a lot about the role of rugby as almost a role model for that redefinition, opening up the idea of being Japanese. Now let's hear from an Olympic perspective.
Okay, so the first of all, like the game, I will not ask about how many people have an Olympic ticket right now, because I don't have any right now. Oh, she has one. But anyway, so the thing is, the Olympic Games will welcome over 226, their nation and the legends athlete. So we are, their natural leader. We think about your nationality and your nations and who you are and how you think, how you watch the sports games. But the most important thing is the Olympic Games has the refugee Olympic team. There is no country, and they have no country right now. And also there happened like the combination team between the South Korea and the North Korea. So you clearly think about what the nation is, apart from the nation. So nothing can do that, and nothing can happen in other occasions. So what I want to say is the Olympic and the Paralympic game is the precious opportunity for the people to think about the nations and also their nationalities and personality.
I think that really demonstrates this opportunity we have. And it would be great to get some questions from you about how we can make the best out of these opportunities to open up the idea of being Japanese. Now, my second question for the group, and I think I'm going to start with David on this one, is always best to be ready. Is that we know that major sporting events, particularly for a country like Japan, which sometimes can feel a little bit closed off from the rest of the world, this is a great moment to build bridges with the rest of the world, to learn from the rest of the world and to welcome the world in. How are we going to make sure that Japan really develops a new kind of relationship with the rest of the world through these sporting events?
Okay, wow, that's a big question. Yeah, the idea about growing, creating bridges. A lot of this thing is there is. It might jump ahead a little bit, but it might go a little bit to sustainability. And you build stadiums, you bring people in, and you have a wonderful party. But then what do you do later? And this is really an opportunity for Japan to become a destination for sports events. And so if the stadiums are operated well, if the things work well, there'll be more events coming and more people coming again. And really for local areas around the country, for Japan in the region, making Japan a destination, a sports destination, where people can come and enjoy all kinds of sports events. This is a great opportunity for people to test it. So they'll come to the Olympics, see something, hey, this was great. I'll come to some J-League games. Oh, and come to the rugby. Oh, this was great. Let's go see some baseball. And hopefully it will start a cycle where people will come and want to enjoy what's in Japanese stadiums.
I think that's an amazing opportunity, and I was very excited to see that JFA is bidding for the Women's World Soccer Cup. So good luck to them. Hiromi, would you like to take the question?
Not only their sports event, Olympic Games has their big journey. They're heading to the Olympic Games. We will do the Tokyo 2020 Olympic torch relay for 121 days. So that we're going to go through their travel all over Japan. And at this moment, each 47 prefectures have a task force team to develop how to operate the Olympic torch relay. So each local authority proposed as the ideas and communication tools and also the goods and also there's some so many things for the review. So seeing that, so we are review it by their global communication. Is there any discriminations? Is there any misunderstanding in a method or something like that? So we are communicating with their international team and also their local prefectural team. So I realized I feel clearly the local authorities are going to be globalized. They learned a lot and branding, and they can consider about the Olympic brand. So, and also that they can see how to communicate internationally. So sports event is much more, the sports engagement program is the much huge opportunity for the local areas to be globalized, but localized.
I think that's a very important point. Here we are in Tokyo, and very often these conversations about Japan and the rest of the world are actually conversations about Tokyo and the rest of the world. And I think it's great to hear that from an Olympic perspective. This is spreading more regionally, more locally across the whole country. Can I now throw the question to you again?
Very precisely. Okay, there's 3 points actually. The first one, the sports festival and also the Rugby World Cup is the window to the world for the young generation. So one of the hot cities in the Kamaishi and Iwate prefectures, and I saw the really tangible high school student actually open their world through this tournaments really tangibly. And for me personally, rugby actually expand my world to globally. So that's the first one. Secondly, local city opened their market to globally. So in the comparison with the Tokyo 2020, we have 12 host cities across the nations, and international travelers actually spend 2 weeks. But beyond that, actually 4 billion people internationally watching the Rugby World Cup, and then they know the where is the host city. So we are going to have a Tokyo 2020 in the next year. So all of the travelers come to Japan or Tokyo in 2020 can visit the Rugby World Cup host cities as well. And third point is rugby from the global perspective. It's really important timing how we can make rugby more global sports. So rugby is popular only in a really limited number of countries. No rugby in China, no rugby in India, a little bit rugby in United States. But this is the first tournament in Asia, and then so Japan can be the catalyst or the really important to have to make the rugby the global. That's it.
Thanks again, and we the overall theme of our conference is about how Japan can take a global leadership position. I think that's a very good example of how that's possible. Kenneth.
Hi, thank you. I think it's the perspective that these are sports events that are coming here, but you don't have to be a rugby fan to enjoy rugby. Same thing with the Olympics. Tokyo has had a shortage of arenas and venues, and particularly this year and next year, because they've been prepared or being used for the Olympics. But there's also a great rebirth of new arenas coming to Tokyo and Yokohama over the coming years. I think 2 or 3 different arenas are going to be opened up in Ariake. So I think there'll be many more events coming. And so whether it's sports events or regular concerts, musics, go to those, enjoy them. Even sports events like the NBA. If you're not an NBA fan, you'll love it as an entertainment, 2.5, 3 hours of a lot of fun and energy. And so open your mind and go and attend and enjoy sport and entertainment from a broader perspective.
Thanks very much, Kenneth. And that's a great reminder to us all of what we can do, how we can enjoy and participate in it. I'm going to put this next question to you initially, Hiromi. And this is my last question before I kind of open the discussion to the floor. So again, I hope you're getting ready with your great questions. Okay, can I have hands up? Anybody who's already got a question? Okay, we're getting somewhere. Great, thank you. Right, so my final question to this sort of panel bit of the discussion is about sustainability. And this is sustainability in 2 ways. One is the kind of sustainability of investment, making sure, as David's already touched on, that we don't end up with big, expensive, empty stadiums, basically rusting and rotting. So that we make sure that the infrastructure that we're creating actually has a sustainability, but also we've already seen how the issue of environmental sustainability has come up in a number of the discussions that have been taking place in different panels today. So I'd like some thoughts on that environmental sustainability and what messages events like 2019 and 2020 can send to the world, well, to the country and to the world about that as well. So Hiromi, would you like to take, you can either take both parts of it or you can just take one part of it.
The both part. They are in this morning in a plenary sessions. So their minister said the quality of their infrastructure of Japan is that means the sustainability. So the dwelling their every single materials in their related with Olympic Games is the required to keep the sustainabilities. For example, like in an athlete village, we will use the wood, their nation, which is gathered from the nationwide, we will return to the village, to the town after we use, and every single bottles and their other things we think about to recycle, and also the environmental, the influence. And always, but we are suffered from the budget. Usually, to put importance on the sustainability and environment, it costs a lot. So nobody think about their, the wood is coming from their, the suburb, but transportation fee, their cost there to our budget, and also the CO might be their, the fleet will, the vehicle will, explore the CO2 or something. But we are now, the all total, the sustainability and all, their all the activities we will we will do that. For example, like in the previous Olympic Games, sports cheering up tool, it's like people using their stick balloons. But at this moment, this is a plastic things. So the IOC does not like using such like not sustainability one. So their partners is now thinking about their very much sustainable giveaway to the road and sports goods. So that's the good things. But we need to think about the not only the one aspect, just in the material, but we think about the transportations and also the after the cost to your project. So that's the very much the challenging to us. But Olympic Games have so many examples to success on the sustainability. We have a sustainability plan after the 2020. You can see there are so many the success stories, and also the the not success one.
Thanks very much, and I think that the public has been already sort of very impressed by some of the stories coming out of 2020, like the medals from recycled mobile phones, like the podiums being made out of recycled marine plastic waste. These are symbolic things. They're not going to change the world, but they may change some minds. Can I pass it over to you, David?
More than just my idea, what I'd like to share about this idea of sustainability is something that I learned a couple weeks ago. A few weeks ago, I was in Amsterdam, and I was talking to the president of the Ajax stadium, the stadium at Ajax, and I asked him about what he was doing for sustainability, and some of the things they were doing there might have some. It's a little bit late to do it for rugby, starting next week, but there's some things that stadiums in Japan could do, and the easiest way to explain it is right now the stadium in Amsterdam, their electricity bill is negative. They sell electricity to the city. They have solar panels across the top of the stadium. They've set up a couple windmills. It's Holland, so they have windmills. So they've set up windmills and solar panels, and then and everyone knows that electricity, when you create it, you have to use it or it runs away, or you have to store it somewhere. So what they've done is taken old batteries from Nissan, from electric cars, and put them under the stadium, because an electric car battery that's 7 or 8 years old only recharges to 70%, which is not good for a car, but it's good enough to store in the stadium. And so they just have all these old car batteries in the stadium, electric car batteries in the stadium, and when those get old, they replace them with new old car batteries. But so they store all their electricity, they use it during the game. What they have left over, they sell to the city. And so that kind of concept, that kind of idea of real sustainability that goes on for a long time, would be something I'd love to see happen here.
Thanks very much, David. And here we have an example of a concrete action, right? We want more of these coming out from everyone in this room. Again.
As for the sustainability topic, conceptually, I personally do not like the use the word legacy because that sounds like something behind, outdated kind of things. So we, as in the rugby industry, we use the word origin. So we kind of like stirred something from the Rugby World Cup, and so based on leveraging that opportunity, how to build the future even after the Rugby World Cup, leveraging the existing the stadiums beyond to 2020 and 2021. That's the conceptually is really important point, and more like a people's behavior topic. Japanese rugby national teams, their team principle is they try to be the akogarerareru sonzai. So they try to be the iconic athlete to be respected by kids. So one of the rules they made is very simply clean up the changing room after all of the matches, whatever the game result is. So if they do this, then all of the kids can see that through the news or media, and then, hey, this is a good behavior. So all of the spectators and the visitor to the stadium maybe can bring the garbage to the home, etc. So I think these 2 points we can actually leverage the Rugby World Cup.
I think there's a really powerful points, and I know from the kind of international discussion about this how during the last Rugby World Cup the Japan fans, wherever they went, clearing the stadiums became one of the big media stories. And people looked at this and said, wow, this is just different from how any other fans anywhere in the world would behave. This is incredible. And again, it's Japan showing a kind of leadership. It may not be a big deal, but it's something very specially Japanese. And it actually does get all sorts of thoughts about respect, environmental issues, a whole lot of issues into the debate that otherwise wouldn't be there. Can we finish with Ken?
Yeah, I think mine will be quite short on sustainability. I think it goes back to investment, and the example that David mentioned. It takes investment to build those solar panels, and it takes investment to make those windmills that Japan, I think, is a leader in. So, and of course, there's a lot of capital in Japan. So, if there's new investment going up, there certainly is there's a will, there's a way to get things done here in Japan that perhaps don't exist elsewhere.
Thanks, Kenneth. And again, we have a great example of how Japan can lead. Now, the panel deserves a round of applause at this precise moment, because it is now, my timing clock tells me, 31 minutes, 45 seconds to go. So we've reached the end of this panel session before 30 minutes. So a round of applause, please, to the panel. Never underestimate how difficult timekeeping is on these occasions. And now that means we've got even more time for your great questions. Let's go to the back of the room first. We're going to try to take 3 questions at a time. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Tatsuo Master, Chairman of Faircop Capital in London. I don't like to shed cold waters on wonderful, upbeating debates. I really enjoyed, but there's one question to the lady from Olympic Committee. No, Baron Kubeltan said amateurism. Now professionals are playing most of the game, number one. Number two, the size of participating countries are expanding, huge, and enormous burden on the local committee or central government to support all these. And facilities could remain rather idle, and also excessive commercialization. And also held most severe time in August in Japan, for example. So do you think, can you manage Olympic in a better way in future after Tokyo? Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I'd like to remind, I wasn't keeping an eye on the time there, but I'd like to remind people, please, we're trying to keep questions to 30 seconds maximum, okay? I think you were just on time. Please.
Thanks for the great panel, Ms. Yuito Yamada from McKinsey. I would like to ask a question to Hiromi-san and also David regarding sustainability, right? And I think that Japan, although has for one example, very high recyclable rate. It's 85% in PET bottles versus in Europe it's 40% and US is 20%. It's extremely high. But with that, actually people feel that we're already actually pretty good, and the consumption of PET bottles in the world, Japan is very high. How could we use those games, especially Olympic coming up, to have the peer pressure from overseas in terms of what's occurring in Japan, and maybe have a better behavior towards PET bottles and plastic usages, and decrease that to a sustainable state? I'd love to hear some ideas.
Thanks very much. And here, please. Can we?
Thank you very much. I'm Yuko, a Global student here. I feel that many of the sport events that are introduced here depend too much on the let's say that the Japanese players are doing very well, and in the rugby and Olympics, there will be some competitions that the Japanese players are not even involved in. How do we still keep the audience and the whole nation very motivated to be involved or cheering for throughout the event, even the Paralympics? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, there's some tough, challenging questions for us. One of the challenges for the panel is how to turn some of these into positive ideas for the future. Because we're not going to let this stop at criticism. We're going to move it on. So I think the first question is for you, which is pouring cold water on issues like temperature of Japan, of Tokyo at that time of year, etc., for the Olympics.
That is thank you very much for the question. So honestly speaking, in a play meeting between us, the Kenneth and David, asked me about the 3 big questions to the Olympic Games. That is all, that is all you mentioned. The first one is the governance. The second one is budget, and the third one is the heat wave. They are all people, they are asking us about how to resolve these issues. And the following the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games, the Beijing and the Paris and the Los Angeles, and also Milano, and they all the urban cities. So people think about only the urban cities and the mature metropolitans can host their Olympic Games. So that means much more not the amateur sports. That's the collect, we need to think about how to communicate and PR to their sports games. The most important thing is we are facing the everyday, to keep the budget as modest as possible. And there are sometimes, we are asking honestly speaking, we are asking to the IOC the limitation of budget to release the limitation of the budget. Nothing exception is allowed from the IOC, because they know about your concern, everybody concerns. At this moment, 1 year to go for less than the 1 year to go for the games, no exemption of their the budget release and the limitation release and happen. So the heat wave also we also are afraid of something happened during the Olympic Games. But we are trying to any examples in any trial to release from the heat wave. It's not spiritual. It's not a split things. Okay, let's forget about the heat or something. We are very much scientific and the practical way to solve the heat wave from the protect the public and spectators. And athletes are very strong. The athlete first, but the athlete tried to do their best. But people, you are the main player on the road. So we are very much think about your health, and also think about at the same time the environmental environmental, the influence. So thank you very much. We don't have any concrete conclusion right now, but we are always think about it. We are always trying to solve these three big questions.
I think wouldn't it be easier if we lived in a non-democracy, and then we'd probably be able to control the weather. I've seen that happen in Beijing sometimes. Right. So I think it was Yamada-san, your question, and I think you addressed it to David and to Hiromi. Is that right? Okay, so this is about sustainability, and there was a particular issue there about what actually we're going to do with all this PET bottles, etc., that are recycled. How do we use this to paint to tell a new story about recycling and about sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, just to answer your question very quickly, I'm not part of the organizing committee, so I don't have any authority to make any rules. But your question, how to lead it, it means you're looking for something symbolic and something people can easily understand. So, make a competition among fans. Did the Germans collect more PET bottles, or did the British collect more PET bottles for recycling? And just do something that's interesting that people can understand that this is something that has to be done. So the games is a short period. You can do something symbolic, and that's a way to lead. And so one thing about Olympics too, the question about investments and things like that. Actually, it's the organizing committee of the Olympics. They're really in an unfair position because their job is to do one Olympics, but everyone expects them to solve problems like 15 and 20 years in the future as well. And so they only have enough money for one games, but they're expected to do all this stuff in the future, and it's a little bit unfair. So we have to be kind of nice to them because they're really trying hard.
Okay, so I have the three first history for the Olympic Games to use the recycled bottles, and following these three examples is there so many examples will happen for sure. The first thing is their Tokyo 2020 Olympic torch bearers uniform will be produced by the recycled PET bottle, thanks for the Coca-Cola. So they gather the PET bottle and will do their, the merge into the textile to develop and produce their torch bearers uniforms. And we put in the recycled bottles uniform on the how can I say here color, yes, and inside the color. This is the first Olympic game to produce the uniform from the PET bottle. That is their small thing, but I love it. And the marks on in the color is the first designed by the organizing committee. The second one is look at burners. So many burners in the cities, Tokyo 2020, and so many, city dressing have been developed by their plastic. So this is also the recycled PET bottles we're going to use. The third one, this is a big thing, podium. You know that? It's their, victory ceremony is produced by the PET bottles. But we are trying to, the thing is never tried to produce the podium as a Olympic victory ceremony. It's under examination right now because we are lack of strength. So we tried to how to, utilize the PET bottles. And also at the same time, we were not appealing this is a recycled matter, but we are, futuring on how sea pollutions by the PET bottles, or how to, the environmental issues happened by plastics or something like that. So we are now trying to the new things happen from the recycled PET bottles, and for sure we are now some examples following there are these kind of the things. But we will see, in the 2020, so many things happened by the year, the pet bottles and also the recycled matters. Thank you.
Kenneth, did I see you? Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily comment on the sustainability question, but on the question regarding sponsors and their role that they play, and the Japanese or the players as well. So the stories about the athletes don't come out and people aren't made aware of them unless there's sponsors bringing those to light. And particularly what's interesting in relation to the Olympics, sponsors don't get any exposure within the field of play of any Olympics, right? It's the only sport, unlike the World Cup, basketball, anywhere you see the sponsors. So the sponsors who are paying a huge sum of money, again, reducing the cost of the burden to the government as well, provide a huge benefit in that they're bringing the stories out about the athletes. They're bringing the backstories of how the guy is working 3 jobs to train. All those stories don't come out. The emotional attachment that people make to the athletes and to the games themselves wouldn't come out unless the sponsors were there telling those stories. So I think the sponsors are instrumental in terms of reducing the budget as well as on the marketing and promotion side of the event. Yeah, that was I actually wrapped up all 3 points in that. Thank you very much.
And I think that there's also some interesting things there about, for example, a sponsor like Coca-Cola actually becoming involved in putting forward some innovative solutions as part of its sponsorship on the sustainability front. Now, I'm going to point the third question we got, which was, it's fine if Japan is doing well in competition. How will Japanese fans behave if and when Japan is not doing so well? So I'm going to put that question to you, Ken.
As an organizing committee, we have a really strict, not really rule, but a principle that we should not promote a Japan team only. So every time we create like a promotional materials whatsoever, we always have to be equal to 20 participating unions. So that's a basic rule. So we don't really rely on the, like a Japan teams. But at the same time, there's a really interesting one specific program which is called the Scrum Unison Project, which is organized by the ex-captain of the Japan national teams. That project actually let the children learn about like a national anthem of the participating unions and teams are coming to their city. So, for example, Sapporo City going to have a Tonga, and then elementary school students actually learn how to sing the national anthem of Tonga. That's interesting, actually. National anthem is some, like a mindset-wise, is supposed to be sung by like a citizen, or the people who has the like a nationality. But I personally can sing the French national anthem, New Zealand. When I get drunk, I will always think, like it was other rugby players. So that's the culture we have at the Rugby World Cup.
Do we want to hear a little bit of?
No. And also, sorry, a little bit like a sustainable topic. For example, the Heineken, we are the worldwide sponsors. But rugby fan drink like 3 pints of beers every match. That's average numbers, huge. Ridiculously the heavy amount of beers. But we use a reuse bottle, a reuse cup. So we don't actually switch the cup every time. So the more beers you drink, and then the more the cups you can save. So.
And I was in the immigration panel earlier, and I heard that there are now 132 nationalities resident in Shinjuku alone. So maybe some of the local fans will also be able to be representing a global audience as well. Again, back to almost our first question of changing some of the ideas about Japan. Right, let's take some more questions.
So, Doug Mellinger. First thing I was thinking was how happy I am that I'm not a Olympic marathon runner with the weather. I'm very hopeful that the Olympics here is similar to the experience I had in London, because the people of London, the way they came out to support the fans and the happiness. I think everyone in London was taking some sort of happy pill. And it was just amazing to see the cultural change. The question I have is more for Ken, which is, as business leaders, you've got the Coca-Colas, which are these massive supporters where they've got budgets to spend tens, hundreds, billions, whatever they're spending. But from the rest of the business community and for local businesses in Japan, how should they be thinking about the Olympics and the way to get engaged, either with their customers or as some sort of a sponsorship?
Okay, let's take your question, please. Sorry, it's John.
Joanna Pittman, Bailey Gifford, Japan Trust. This is a big picture question. We heard this morning about the deterioration of relations between Japan and South Korea. I seem to remember there was a football event jointly hosted by Japan and Korea some years ago. We're worried about whether Korea might boycott some of these sports events. The relationship seems to be getting very bad. To what extent can these sporting events do something to build bridges between the two countries?
Thanks, Joanna. And we had a question here. Here, please.
Thank you. I have one question to the Fukushima-san. So I think is the most successful is the Olympic game is Barcelona, because in terms of the increasing is the tourism. Is after the the 1988 in the Barcelona Olympic and it took place. After that is a number of tourism increasing huge. Is taking the advantage of is Olympic is many tourism coming to. So do you have actually any strategy or to increase the number of tourism after the Rugby Olympic? Because Rugby Olympic is too many Western countries is a join. So such a is a huge opportunity to increase, I think. So that is my question.
Thanks very much. Now let's just deal with those questions. I'm going to give each question to one person only to get us to our finish line. So the first question is from Derek. That's right. Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. I'm so sorry. I put in an extra syllable. My mistake. And this is about how business leaders at different levels, not the tier 1, tier 2, or maybe even tier 3 sponsors, how they can engage with an Olympic agenda.
Well, I think the biggest sponsors, as I mentioned, are really looking at the investment that they have to make in the Olympics. So the Coca-Colas of the world who aren't getting any on-media exposure and have to buy all the connection, I think they're really thinking about whether that's worth the investment. And I think the IOC, from what I understand, is now actually considering should the model change to allow some sponsors to have exposure on the playing pitches and fields. Japan is unique with this Olympics. Most Olympics and most organizing committees provide exclusive opportunities by product category to connect with the games. I don't know what the number is here. Is it more than 50 sponsors or? Yeah, 55 sponsors. So for the first time, there's no exclusivity in categories of sponsorship sales. So JAL is a sponsor, as is ANA. So this is a very unique opportunity where there's not I don't know if it's opportunity from the corporate standpoint. I think there's been a lot of corporate, or I should say governmental pressure, as well as Dentsu pressure to come on board. So with 55 sponsors, it's really difficult to differentiate yourself. And it's more, if you're not part of this, you're not part of the patriotic support of the Japan team and the Japan Olympics.
I wonder whether that goes, because I think Doug, your question was also about beyond that family. Maybe local, smaller businesses which stand no chance of having the kind of scale of investment to be able to get into that kind of magic circle. Do you? I mean, clearly you'll be. There's an element of defending the rights of those within the magic circle, but is there anything that we can suggest positively for people outside that at a much smaller local scale?
Concrete idea for local scales. Homestays. Allow families of Olympic athletes to stay in homes. Organize committees. It can be the chonaikai where you live. It can be the mansion, the kandikumiai. It can be whatever. But so many of the athletes aren't determined until a couple months before the games. Their parents don't have a place to stay in Tokyo. They don't have tickets. They don't know how they're going to get here. They don't know where they're going to be. So my suggestion is you make these little organizations, offer homestays, and then with the condition that the athlete has to come and have dinner at your house once. And then it's a great experience for everybody. Is one simple idea that you can do that.
And maybe businesses could do that, encourage their employees to participate in that kind of thing, and somehow sneak under the Olympic. The Olympic ring fence of sponsorship, but have some association. Right, okay, so now the next, Joanna, your question was about, geopolitical tensions, which is obviously the big theme of our conference. And in fact, when we were brainstorming kind of the areas for discussion earlier today, one of the questions that we thought about, and then we said, no, that's too difficult, was how do we avoid, particularly the Olympic Games in 2020, becoming World War III on the sports field? So we said, no, we won't talk about that. But you forced us to talk about it, so we will talk about it, and I will ask Hiromi to take this one.
So despite their pessimistic in the morning sessions, there is no optimistic the opinions, ideas come upon in the plenary sessions. But I am so optimistic for the relationship between Japan and South Korea, because KOC, Korean Olympic Committee, never accuse us. The only South Korean government is their claim to their organizing committee and the IOC. So this is very good, the phenomena for us, the phenomena for us. Sports is different from the political things. They know about it. And also the 2 point, the second point for these issues is the new president of the Japan Olympic Committee, Mr. Yamashita, experience about and also so much painful about the Moscow Olympic Games. Japanese delegation could not make it. So no more than the President Yamashita recognized about this issue. So he is he is the judo, the athlete, but at the same time, he is very much, they think about the sports should be the independent from the political issues and not cause the World War III in the Tokyo 2020 Games. So the thing is, therefore, as inside the organizing committee, we have so many, the dispatch from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So people were very conscious about it. But in the sports area, the sports side people, we are so optimistic. We have so many friends in Korea, and people are communicating. And also we trust the Japanese people who will welcome the South Korea people as an athlete.
The Olympic movement is sometimes accused of having slightly over-grand philosophies and ideas. The Olympic movement actually has 3 values. These are friendship, excellence, and respect. Now, we all know what excellence means in an Olympic context. It means personal bests. It means pushing world records. We can see that. But I think that it's very easy to get cynical about and to underestimate the power of what happens in the athletes' village when those athletes from completely different countries with maybe very opposing ideas and politicians who are fighting each other, maybe even armies armed against each other. And in the Olympic Village, that all vanishes and it goes away. And actually those big ideas of friendship and respect, they really come through. And I think that at its best, sport can really break down some of those barriers and make human connections, which are more important and more creative than anything politicians ever manage. Can I now go to the Barcelona tourism question? How are we going to take this opportunity? And I'm going to give it to Gen
Sure.
to bring more people to Japan long term, not just for these events.
Can I touch a little bit upon about like South Korea Japan topic? It's very small. The one of the Japanese player Gu Jion, he's like a Japanese national team players, but he still has the nationality of the Korea, and his father is a legendary player of like Korean national teams. It's just like going back to the first point. So this is rugby. This is Japan rugby team. So, and if you talk about like a tourism topic, number wise, we are going to have about 600,000 travelers during the tournament period, and visit like 12 host cities, and each host cities put a lot of effort to they let them spend the times longer, and like a 2 weeks travel average wise. But what we have been talking with them usually is think beyond the tournament. So the one thing is the really close collaboration with the JNTO, Japan National Travel Organization, and they spend a huge investment to promote, put the money on the TV commercial of the Rugby World Cup in France and England, because looking at the tourism demography in Japan, many people are coming from the Southeast Asia, but not many from the European side, but also in the Southern Hemisphere, like New Zealand and Australia. So really closely communicating with them and try to target the specific countries where we don't have a lot of travelers, and working with the local cities. And the secondly, data. So we are going to accumulate the 1 million tickets registers, which can be shared as a statistics, as a survey. So how many people are actually going to the Oita, from which country, and then what's the age, and who are interested in which prefecture. So that kind of data will become the first materials for the local city to discuss about what's going to be their tourism strategy beyond 2019.
Thanks very much again. Now I'm going to finish by getting some ideas and putting them up here, and you're going to vote. So I'd like quickly to go through the panel. You got 20 seconds each. Give me your concrete action that you'd like to see happen that is going to make this so amazing for Japan and the world. Kenneth. Okay, come on, I'm ready.
Going back to my first statement, I think it's to expand the definition of what is Japanese, and if people define that presently by passport, I think we should change the definition or allow Japanese people who have lived here for 2 generations and or who are born here to become Japanese should they wish to.
Okay, passports. That's the idea, right? Okay, passports. Okay.
Actually, to ticket holders, keep stadium clean. And for the non-ticket holder, please watch Invictus, which is about the Rugby World Cup in South Africa.
Okay, right, thanks.
I have a very specific proposal. I want to change the operations of stadiums in the country. The way Japanese stadiums are run now, it's typically run by the city government, who is very conservative and doesn't change anything. By opening up to a more open group, we can put in new technology, we can put in more stuff, we can make more things come to the stadiums, and this will make a sustainable tourist destination for those towns.
Okay, we're going to change the stadium management.
Yes.
And finally?
Through their Olympic Touch Day, will create 121-day drama, and they find there are over 10,000 simple healer in Japan.
Okay, right. So how am I going to capture that? It's 10,000.
Over 10,000 healers, it's torchbearer.
Yeah, okay.
So the simple healers,
Yeah,
the people
yeah,
can
yeah.
see or not the healer is goes to the athlete, but also their simple healer in the local area.
Yeah. 10,000 and more. Right, okay, so we're going to have a quick vote. Anyone, this is for your favorite idea, okay? Your favorite idea. You can only vote for one. Whose favorite idea is passports for people coming in? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's about 15 people. Okay, whose favorite idea is clean stadiums? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got about 4 votes for clean stadiums. Whose vote is for watching Invictus? Okay. Okay, I vote for that as well. I love that film. And changing stadium management. Okay, right. We got quite a few. That's kind of that's kind of, yeah. I think that's on 15 as well. And then for using the torch relay to do this amazing thing. What's the vote there? Okay, right. So fine. That means we have a final vote on is it passports or is it changing stadium management? Who votes passports? Who votes stadium management? Okay, I think stadium management wins. But we've got some great proposals. Thank you all very much. No, it's concrete. It's real. Thank you very much. Thank you to the panel.
Yeah, thank you so much for insightful.